Since we launched IQ in late January, we've had no less than 6 studio discussions on a spectrum of current topics. Terrorist attacks in France and the implications on freedom of speech here in Singapore, the budget, Skills Future, which is an aspect of the budget that was announced by the Minister for Finance, the Women's Charter, and 2 parts of a very compelling discussion on understanding LKY. And of course, some of the more controversial policies that were associated with Singapore's first Prime Minister. These discussions had honest questions and comments from the studio audience and robust exchanges with the panelists, some of whom were ministers. IQ is about encouraging one another to ask inconvenient questions that matter and getting those accountable, including the people in government, to engage with meaningful responses. The idea is to promote an honest, from-the-heart discussion between people who have a stake in this country, and our community. Today's discussion is to take this a step further by bringing together people who have burning questions on a range of issues and have a cabinet minister respond to them honestly and clearly. Welcome to IQ's inaugural Festival of Inconvenient Questions. We call it IQ Live. I'm Vishwa Sadashivan. With me on the panel is Masagos Zulkifli, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Second Minister for Home Affairs and Foreign Affairs. Welcome. We also have in studio an audience raring to ask questions. Good questions, inconvenient questions. They are Singaporeans and PRs who come from all walks of life. All I can say is thank you very much for making the time to be here, and I hope we'll all enjoy the next 1 hour. Right. Okay, who wants to ask the first question? Yeah, Jayasudha.
One of the things that I often think about is the state of meritocracy in this country. And Minister Sir, you did mention in your speech when you were appointed minister that you are here because meritocracy works. And it works in Singapore. And I think all of us are here, and I'm here through the education system because meritocracy works too. But there are ways in which meritocracy fails as well. And one of those ways is the very fact that homes in which you have students who are in elite schools, for example, they all come from homes with a particular type of background. They are generally higher middle income. They generally come from a certain strata of society. And then there is another strata of society which sort of stays that same way. And I think this is a cycle of sorts, a vicious cycle of sorts. Elitism is an issue in this country. How do we combat this? This is an excess of meritocracy. It's a reality as well.
I see that where we have ended up right now is not a bad outcome anyway. In the first place, there have been many families who started really badly off, poor, low income, even a very poor view of the world, actually, of opportunities and so on, and they have arrived. That is proof, at least, of a good group of people that have actually done well. But what we have to do going forward, now that these people are well endowed and going forward, what is it that society should demand of them? And I think what Bernanke has stated about meritocracy is quite instructive. That is, those who got most of society must give back the most.
This is Ben Bernanke.
Ben Bernanke. Yeah. And I think this is where we are missing, because when people take a lot and you don't see them, they just benefit individually. I think that's why society is getting upset, because you're just benefiting yourself. But when society, when those who succeed much better, faster because of their assets, even because of their assets, and they give back, I think there will be less pushback for this. And the same requirement is made for anybody who succeeds. In a society which I think operates this way, you have the assets, you have the ability, you give back. I think it will be all right.
So, maybe let me be a little provocative. We needed the scholars system in the earlier years to build a cadre of people who can lead Singapore. Do we still need a scholars program? Do we still, I mean, we can give scholarships. First of all, I think it's a misnomer. Yeah. A person who receives a scholarship is not a scholar. He's a recipient of a scholarship. Yes. The quintessential idea of a scholar is one who has achieved scholastic ability. So these are people who have achieved, who've done well, they can be given scholarship. But do we need to continue to create that elite group called scholars? Perhaps the time has come for us to sort of dismantle some of these. I mean, it's not that we have anything against scholars per se, but some of these factors can be taken out of the equation.
I think you can call it what you like, but at the end of the day, we need a good group of people to be in the government, the civil service, who have two very important qualities. One is the capability, competency to do what they are set out to do. And that is, you can somewhat have a proxy through the education achievement. But there is another quality which is as important, in fact, to me more important, and that's integrity. And without this, then you will have just corrupt officials. So this scholarship system, choosing the people who are going to get this scholarship, must choose and weed out those who are not, either having one or just the other. I think if you just have people who are competent, you're going to have a corrupt bureaucracy. You have someone who's just good guys, you're going to collapse the whole government. You need this both.
Yeah. So, Minister, what are the chances of, I mean, we've heard the Aspire Committee report.
Yes.
We've heard of Skills Future.
Yes.
All this is sending a message, I believe,
Yes.
right, that you can actually switch tracks. The old system was, if you're on the track, you go fast, and you remain on the track. If you're not on the track, you can't get on the track. But what we're hearing now is that you can actually switch tracks. You can be a non-scholar, and at some point, you become a scholar. You can be a scholar, and if you don't make the grade, you step out. And if I could quote one of my favorite quotes from DPM Tharman, right, in the budget speech, he said, "We must become a meritocracy of skills, not a hierarchy of grades earned early in life." I think he captures it so well. Meritocracy of skills, not a hierarchy of grades earned early in life.
I mean, let me ask any one of you who has worked for some time, how many times did your supervisors or your people you directly report to ask you what was your grade for your maths in secondary school? Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Actually, I'm not sure if I agree with that, Minister. I mean, maybe
I don't.
I know that.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
The civil service in itself cares about grades.
At the beginning.
At
the beginning, yes.
Well, not necessarily at the beginning. I personally had a colleague who, in fact, recently resigned because he did not have a recognized university degree. It was a private university degree. It's not recognized. So he could not jump that grade in terms of promotion. He was waiting far too long, and therefore he left. So this, I think, is an issue. If we truly are building a meritocracy of skills, the civil service should, in fact, take the first step.
Look, this is, like I said, a human system. There are quick and dirty proxies, like grades, which university you come from. Which some supervisors will just use it to make their job easy. But some supervisors don't. And I in my own life, my own work, I never do that. I look first at what you can bring into the system, what value you will add into the system, and you will actually perform or not. Because some things are just promises. Whatever degree you may have. Because I have seen people with first-class degrees from good universities. They are ruined of their own lives. I mean, they just can't even carry out their own life properly. They can't take care of themselves. How do you take care of other people in the work? So it is up to people in systems, to actually push the envelope, try something different, and things do change. I do remember in Singtel, we were a government organization too. We had that system. But there are people, supervisors like myself, who said, no, we are going to do something different. And we did change. And today, people go in there, and I do not know why it is now. I've left there for 9 years. People go in there not because you come from Harvard or you come from NUS, but you come with an asset that the company will use for mutual benefit of.
So essentially what you're saying is you agree with us that the time has come for us to move away from, and it has to be a concerted effort to move away from a narrow definition of abilities with academic grades.
And I like to remind again, in the civil service particularly, and in fact it applies in everything, don't forget integrity. That while you may have all these paper qualification, you'll be tested. Because you are in position of authority, position of power, you will use that wrongly sometimes.
Oh.
Good evening, Minister. With meritocracy comes increasing number of people with better education background. So do we have to worry? Will there be a day, right, where there is a flood of qualifications in the market and we have to start vying for jobs in an even more competitive way than we are right now? Do we have to worry about that?
I think we all have to worry about how we are going to evolve as a society. And some societies that we can see before ourselves, like those in Korea as an example, quite instructive. They fulfill the wishes of the masses to have degrees. And if I understand it right, about 80 to 85% of Koreans have a degree. But you don't have a job market that can provide for 85% degrees, so the market will also sort itself out. In the end, there will be some with the kind of degrees that the market will not accept as a skill asset for them to take on. And they end up doing jobs which is not as meaningful as they wish to. So at the end of the day, I think you have to take care of yourself. I always tell people who don't get promoted as fast as they wish, say, don't let the system determine who you are. You decide. You decide what you can bring to the system, and if you think the system does not value you, move on. Don't just stay there and hope, and then get upset over promotions that you never get.
Okay, yes.
Could perhaps the next line would be to create opportunities, not for the people, but to educate them to create their own opportunities in the world.
Yes.
Because it is really wide, isn't it?
Yes.
With technologies right now, you can go sell to UK, to US, to Japan, to China. So maybe more of that kind of skills could be imparted to the citizens so that they are able to create their own opportunities and stop, blaming others, namely the government, for lack of opportunities.
I think the government too has a responsibility, at least our government do that, to make sure there are really opportunities, because what exists today as an opportunity, let's say a bus driver, for example, simplest example, may not exist in just 10 years or 5. I've already came back from Hanover where they are already testing truck and buses which is driverless. And the person is actually, I've seen him reading newspaper after the bus starts. So he's actually not even taking care of the bus. The bus is just there just to make people feel safe there's someone in the bus. So, so opportunities need to evolve. And I think one of the difficult things that the government undertakes for itself is to make sure it's forward-looking and make sure that also as we evolve, like you mentioned just now, into a society which are well-schooled, well-qualified, that jobs actually exist. This is a huge, huge undertaking, very difficult to actually fulfill.
Okay. Yes.
We are talking about skill sets and opportunities. My question is, what are the steps the government is taking? I know this is quite a hard question. Government don't normally take such steps. You see, we are free market. But what are the steps that the government is taking to ensure that certain professions don't remain the preserve of the elite? I'm asking this question because I'm a trainee lawyer. Most of the people I see around in my industry are people from really rich backgrounds. I had to go around 1 week trying to find money to pay for my part B, the second part of my bar exams. So how do we prevent? I'm sure there are many other examples. This kind of professions. How do we break the that glass ceiling for people from lower middle income families like myself, for example?
I think that there are two parts to the answer. One, of course, what the government should do or the professions should do for themselves, for their own sake, and what you should do for yourself. For the first part, of course, if we have to look at a particular profession or any profession where standards are really important to make sure that that profession is something which is credible, especially when it involves lives, like doctors, for example. You want to have the highest standard possible. Then there are other professions which maybe I would call a bus driver a profession too, which may not have that exacting standards as a doctor. And then whether these are, whether we believe that it is something you need to protect for particular people or not. The taxi industry, for example, is protected for Singaporeans only. But in other professions, do you want to insulate them and say this is only for, say, Singaporeans? Or is it really a case where only particular people can get in, and therefore you need to break it down And if that comes to a very critical problem, I'm quite sure the government will take that feedback and do what you think we need to do.
I guess your question is barriers to entry.
Yeah, less on
Right.
standards and more of like people from certain financial
socio-economic,
backgrounds.
Yeah.
Right.
Like rather than having all the people from
Yeah.
Bukit Timah, for example,
Yeah.
entering a certain industry, we want people from Woodlands and Marsiling to also go into that particular industry.
Why do you think people from Woodlands and
No, I'm
Marsiling?
just giving an
No,
example.
I mean, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
using your analogy, why do you think it has become the the domain for people of the upper class?
It is-
How do you think it has become that?
I think personally, I mean, I do not have so much of statistics to substantiate my point, but my personal experience, my personal observations, I came from the normal academic stream. The people I have grown up with, the people I've mixed around with, I was directly and indirectly discouraged from going to a junior college. I still managed to make it. And
Fantastic.
despite being in junior college, I was sort of, again, told in a very politically correct manner that you might not be able to go to the local unis because you do not take pure science or double science. There is this kind of
That didn't sound very politically correct.
no, they said it in a very nice way,
okay.
not in a way to humiliate me or something. So I think this is not just my personal observation. I think many people who have come from my background actually have experienced such things. So it's more like, I mean, we can attain that standard, but do we have that social mobility to go on and say, okay, you, regardless of your background, you can compete with this guy who has deep pockets and you can move forward.
Look, there are so many examples around us of people who come from really, really disadvantaged background who have done so well in life. But what worries me is not about that. It's about how then you get the next group of people through. And I think one of the ways which I mentioned just now, what I call the morality of meritocracy, is that those who succeed should come forward and bring those others who were like them in the past to come forward and tell them how you get through this. And this is the only way we can get it done, because a government is just what we do together. This is a quote I got from the internet. I can't remember who said that. But it is not something you must just rely on the government to solve, but all of us can do this. And one of the things we can really value add on, those who know how to getting through this glass ceiling, getting the young people, inspire them early, and just to be there. I'll just give you one example, my personal, if I may. I was at a wedding one day, and then someone came to me and said, Abang Zul, call me Abang Zul. Abang Zul, do you remember me? I said, not really. It was so long ago. I said, I don't just give a name. I'm Zaidi, so and so. Then as we talked, then he said, do you remember what you did to us? I said, what did I do to you? Then he said, every time you were studying in the mosque, I didn't have a nice space at home to study, and I was sitting between what we call Maghrib and Isha. There's nothing to do, because it's too short between the prayers. So I was always sitting there and talking to them, and I didn't realize that I was inspiring them. I inspired them. And then he told me that, Abang Zul, do you know that all of us went to university because of you? So I think that is something we all can do. I did it unintentionally.
Yeah.
But if we do it structurally, we come in, mentor them because we have succeeded. We know the vagaries of life. We know to tell them, look, don't give up on life. Things are not going to be as easy as the system make out for you. You must know how to stay on. You can survive, you can thrive.
But having said that, Minister, just a quick point, right, and then we'll go to Jack, and then to you. I also feel strongly that we cannot continue to patronize. We have to become a society where we don't keep depending on others to help out. Let's be a lot more resilient and fight for ourselves. I know I may sound a bit tough, but really in many societies, people actually are resilient and they fight. In many societies, you have a lot of obstacles ahead of you. It's not a bed of roses that's laid in front of you. And part of the problem is, I think our government has spoilt us, right? and for the longest time, we have been depoliticized, we've been defanged. Therefore, because everything is done by the government, and I think we've lost the capacity to stand on our own and fight our own battles.
But
because we keep looking at the government.
I don't want to lose the point that we ought to come forward, those who can. While yes, we have to learn to be resilient. You have to build that resilience. I agree.
If all the time we wait for somebody to come and and bail you out, it may not happen. You also sometimes need to go and fight your own battles.
I think bailing out is one area which I disagree about. Don't go and bail people out. They have to learn their lesson. But there are people who don't even know they are down there. That there is an up there that they can go to. There is an aspiration that they can dream about. And this is something I think we can do structurally. We have not done this well. And I think we always depend on school systems. We depend on a system which is supposedly must be fair and open. The world doesn't work that way.
And that's what I think ESM Go Chok Tong said, right? Compassionate meritocracy.
Yes.
Now, yes, Jack.
So just to suggest something towards what you are trying to achieve, I was very shocked when we hear that 85 billionaire owns as much as half of the world wealth in Davos this year. And I wrote a Huffington blog about Malala is a billionaire and Donald Trump is not. And why? Because I think we need to redefine what is success based on relevance. How relevant are you to other people? And if you are very relevant, you are a successful person. Rather than to continue to say who is successful is the one who has more money, more selfish, more arrogant, more boastful. Why should we reward such people? So we should redefine that. That is a suggestion for you. Now go to the point that I actually want to ask the question.
Sorry, quick. Who do you think should redefine?
We should redefine...
No, who should redefine?
Everybody. We make it fashionable that a successful person is one that improves the life of other people. A millionaire is one that improves the life of 1 million people. And a billionaire is one that improves the life of 1 billion people. And if you are just having wealth by yourself, you are irrelevant. Because only relevant is relevant. Okay. So I ask my question.
Oh, that's a preamble, is it? Okay.
It's a tool for you to build this. The problem that I was worried about is we have recently moved ourselves into a high-wage regime, and we are relying on productivity, which is supposed to grow 2-3% a year, and is actually not really happening. And you have to put a lot of money to get a little bit of productivity. So that is like very hard. The other one is innovation, which can leapfrog us to a lot of growth. But we don't have a culture of innovation because we are chasing all our innovators to Silicon Valley, to London, to Australia, and you are bringing a pro-white situation. We have this strange Pinkerton syndrome that believes that white are innovative. And I think we have to change that because we have to start to appreciate our own talent. I myself failed everything in school, and I'm very useful outside my country and totally useless in my own country, which is a very strange way.
Totally useless meaning not recognized in your own country.
No, not use. I don't care if I recognize, but I'm not being exploited. And that is a very sad thing because the usefulness...
Let's have a conversation. I'm looking forward to exploiting you.
Thank you very much. But one of the suggestions I think we need to do is to do something that we do very well, which is efficiency, and to recognize the ecosystem of talent here, not on one type of talent, but to build an ecosystem of talent so that we can hunt impact. For example, if a GLC go out to build a township, it should bring along the SME and all the other people. The Korean did that, the Japanese did that, the Singaporean don't do that. Why? So if you can harness all the synapses, synergy between all the talents pool in Singapore, you not only get low wastages, you make use of all the people together, you also get cohesive society, you also have a proud nation, and maybe you should start to think like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 2 points I'd like to respond on. One is about how we see the world, and I think we have to see the world as a very global, connected world, and that the platform we can succeed in is not just here. In fact, indeed, one of the reasons why I got much better traction in Singtel in my career is because I chose to go overseas. Because if I'm going to compete with 12,000 people, I will have no chance to really be so different from them because everyone is trying to get the attention of their bosses and that promotion, whatever it is. So I chose to go to a place where nobody wanted to go, Ujung Pandang, Sulawesi. And guess what? The CEO have to see me every time because I'm the only one there. When he comes down, he has to see me, then he gets to know me, and then he gets to know who I am and what I can bring. And that becomes a habit. Every 3 years I go up somewhere because I know that's where the opportunity is. So the Singtel did not benefit from what I think I could give when I was in Singtel in Singapore. But they certainly noticed me when I was overseas. And I make no excuses for it. I actually love it. And my children grew up overseas with me, with my family. And instead of saying, for myself, I'm a diehard optimist. Instead of telling myself, oh, why do people ignore me? Why do people don't know? I say, no, I'm going to make a difference. I'll do something else, and I'm going to make a big difference. And go back and make sure whatever I do, when I leave, I'll be missed.
But I mean, as a minister, looking at policies, as individuals we can do this, right? Yeah. But I think what Jack is talking about as a system, so, shouldn't there be some mindset shift?
So the same thing I would encourage the young people, that the opportunities are much, much bigger than what you see within. You may get your skills, you may get your passport, your CV in Singapore, but don't limit yourself to where you are. The world is so connected today. It used to cost so much to call Singapore. Nowadays, we can go on YouTube and connect every day. Well, not YouTube, Skype. Skype and connect every day. And you don't really miss that person except the touch and so forth. You can fly almost everywhere. It's so cheap to do so. So it opens up a totally new experience for the young and opportunities for them, because what advantage we have in our system as a Singaporean, the moment you show your Singapore passport, they trust you. That's the branding we have, and we should really use. And I encourage this.
Is your question answered?
So my point is exactly, you have been exploited, so to speak, because you're from Singapore. When I go, for example, for my foreign affairs work, for example, people want to see me. I mean, ministers want to see me, not because I'm another foreign affairs minister, but because I know I'm from Singapore, and that value adds, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I want everyone who has this passport, use it, and don't feel that it is something just because they don't succeed or don't do as well here, to go somewhere and be proud that you did this because you are a Singaporean.
But Mr. Minister, before I come to my own question, I think what Jack is trying to say is even the Singapore's government do not trust we can innovate. Right? Yeah. That's the moment. I can give you 2 examples. Yeah. Do you know that the first tablet that we use now is actually designed by and invented by a Singapore company?
Yes.
Right? But it didn't take off because they ran out of money. Yeah. Right? And the government didn't step in to fund it, the venture. Yeah. Unlike in Korea, Taiwan, that's why they have their local brands, they have local innovation. Right? And in fact, now there's another innovation that came in, which is a watch, which is a smart watch that is actually like a smartphone. Right? You can put a SIM card, and it's designed by Singapore. But unfortunately, it was the US company, Will IM, that fellow who invested it. It's not Singapore companies or venture capitalists. That is what I think Jack is trying to say. Talk about. With due respect, you said our passport people trust us, but why aren't Singaporean government or Singaporean trust ourselves able to innovate?
Yeah, if I may answer that, as much as Korea succeeded with government help, there are also so many countries that succeed without their government. So success is not always a function of government help. And like Wiswa has said, we have become a little bit addicted to that help. And in fact, that when we fail, we also blame the government for not helping. Indeed, in many countries in the world, many countries in the world, people succeed because they don't have the help. They had to struggle, they had to innovate, and in fact, the best innovation come from countries where there was no help. And this is what they have become. Now, I think there is some help we can give, some help we cannot give, and we will make mistakes of choosing the right ones and the wrong one, as many humans would. Creative technology, for example, they were so far ahead of Apple. So far ahead of Apple. Did they get the help? Yes, I think they did get the help. But why did they not succeed? As well as Apple. Because time has changed. Because they didn't hit right where it should have been. It is not a technological innovation. It was an ergonomically right thing to have. things don't always work just because you are ahead. Just those
But
don't always succeed because you are
Minister,
first.
we are probably
Yeah.
not. We are probably talking at cross purposes.
Yeah.
If I understand the two, Mun Seng and Jack, your questions, I think the point they're trying to make is not so much that you're depending on the government.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the point. The point here is, let's recognize the talent that we have.
Yeah,
Let's recognize the people that
we
we
should.
have.
Yeah.
Let's not be, bashful about it.
Yeah.
Let's not just talk about government, yes, but let's, as people.
Yeah.
I don't think you're talking about governments
Only,
but
yeah.
you're talking about as a society. Why is it that we don't seem to
Yeah.
want to pat ourselves on the back?
I
And
think we
recognize-
should. And I think
Yeah.
we should. And I think you're right. We should not just wait for the government to say you're fantastic. I think society should do it too. And you can do it through your...
But I think that's what you're talking about.
Media,
There-
yeah.
there doesn't seem to be this culture
Coming out, yeah.
of saying,
Yeah.
this is us.
So I think again, it's not always a perfect system that we have. I mean, I have so many things that people offer me in my home affairs work too.
Yeah.
And I will probably miss some really good ones because I either have no time or no intuition to do it because I'm human. But there will be, and sometimes these people, they succeed despite me. And really helpful, I come back to them and say, wow, you have done despite the help that I should have been given.
But I'm sure you do agree
Yeah.
that we can take a lot more pride in the kind of resources that we have.
We have, yes.
Our people.
Yes.
And tap our people. And so let's move on to the next issue. Yes, one second.
Let me move on
Okay.
to.
May I
out of
suggest that
Singapore,
we keep it quick
Yes,
because
yes.
time is running out. Yeah.
Your second minister of foreign affairs.
Yes.
This is regarding foreign affairs. China seems to determine to build the Kra Canal in southern Thailand, and this is definitely going to affect Singapore's survivability. Right? I would like to know what are the political and diplomatic strategies that the Singapore government have with regard to this. And related to this is the attitude of President Xi Jinping. He's not very warm towards us. He has visited Cambodia,
Yes.
Indonesia, Malaysia, but not us. He just flew by our corridor. So, and in fact, I read some of the articles by the think tank members. They were quite pissed off with Singapore with a few issues. And that one of them is the Gada port in Pakistan, which they seems to say is that Singapore has sabotaged China's strategic point of developing the port
Yep.
to deliver the oil supply to them. So I think this is related to the Kra Canal, which doesn't make sense in terms of ROI if they are going to throw billions in it.
Yeah.
Why they are doing it? Are they angry about us? And will this sour relationship affect our enormous investment in China and the stability of Southeast Asia as well as North Asia?
It is always interesting to join the dots and then try to make conclusions, but usually when you go and talk to people, you actually find something else, and this is unusual, not unusual. In the same case with anything, but on China, I would say that we started off very well with China, and Chinese are not people who forget. They remember, they value the start that we gave to them, and it is to this day. Of course, it was started with our former Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, with that link with Mr. Deng Xiaoping. And over time, what Mr. Lee had also wanted to do and made sure to do is that you institutionalize that relationship. That you not only rely on him, because in China, he's not always the one who meet people. People want to meet him, much easier. But with us, we have to make sure that they want to meet us. And we have to make sure we are relevant. And this is the reality of who we are. We are actually a very small country, and we have to behave very, very big. And we try to influence world affairs so that our interests are taken care of. And many times we succeed, but not every time. Not every time. Because at the end of the day, we must know who we are, and we must make sure we can influence as much as we can. And at the end of the day, China sees cutting through Kra Canal is something strategic, and they want to do, no matter who tells them, what tells them, they will do it. They will do it. But what we have to do as a nation is to plan the scenario. If they were to do it, what will happen to our industries? And this is the only thing we can do. to plan ahead for eventualities. In the same way too that we had to plan ahead when KLIA came out, when Bangkok Airport came out. And they were really big threat, not just for our airline industry, our airport industry, but also for the livelihood of our taxi drivers, of our hoteliers and everything. But despite them existing and actually became much cheaper than we are, we have prevailed. And we have to repeat the stories over and over again to make sure that whatever changes happening around us that threaten us, we as a nation together, government and the people, work together to make sure that we preserve our space in this world.
Okay.
Minister, I have a question about cyber security in the region. You were talking in the Interpol forum, Interpol conference that was recently held about cyber security, and I'm wondering whether this includes cyber terrorism, and if so, what measures does Singapore have in place to combat this threat?
Yes, yes. This is a very, very good question because it's really very current and it worries world leaders all over. The cyber terrorism is connected with cyber security issues. First, whether we have the right infrastructure, right resources to make sure our infrastructures particularly are resilient to this. Hackers today don't only want to go into your account and look at your social life. They also want to go into critical infrastructures and shut down their power station because they enjoy doing those kind of things. And then they put their mark over there, And recently, we have put together all the agencies that are in charge of the various aspects of cybersecurity into an organization called Cybersecurity Authority, which is headed by Dr. Yaakob. Just started, but the idea is to build capacity in the industry, and this is another good value-add job that our kids can aspire to, because this is not just about hacking, but preventing hacking and arresting hacking, forensics, for example. So that's one part. The other part, unfortunately, is about content and access to contents. And today, the extreme views, particularly today about Islam, exist in the internet, in the social media, and so forth. They're so accessible. And more frighteningly, they're actually very convincing for people who don't know religion particularly. So you go there, you find an answer all for everything, and then they conclude for you. And the views that they have there are simply one, like this. The world is a bad place, and you have to clean it up. And to clean it up, we can't exist with other people, and therefore you destroy everyone else. It's a very simplistic view. That the problem that we have is not my problem; it's you. You have to go. And here is this how you do it. Come to Syria and battle with me. Very simplistic view. I'm trying to make it even more simplistic, but that's basically the message. And the phenomena there too, it is crowdsourcing. People who are creating these websites on their own and for free. Talents, you mentioned those talents that are not recognized maybe, and they're doing it for the wrong purposes. And our youth who are not inoculated get influenced, and we have already caught a few. We know there are people who have aspired to go to Syria for whatever reason. They want to go there, they want to fight, they want to be a martyr, they want to contribute, they want to be heroes, whatever it is, but they have made their move. And we have, fortunately for some, we have caught them. So our worry is this kind of cyber content within the cyberspace is also engendering what we call lone wolves. People who have attacked Sydney, in this a few other places like Copenhagen, because they were not under the direction of anybody. They just want to contribute to the cause. It's like crowdsourcing, and that is most worrying because we can put systems to prevent hacking. We can put ways to basically alert people about possible attacks, remedy them, and so forth. But when it comes to lone wolves who are somehow influenced by this, we don't know who they are. And I worry most for our society when that happens. We will be challenged. What will we, how will we come together after that? Do we heal? Do we forgive?
That's a macro perspective on religious and violence, and I'm going to bring it back to a micro level, domestic issue, and it's under the community engagement program, which is run by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Basically, in this last couple of days, I've been observing online. There is this contestation between some of the Muslim community who are against the idea of having guide dogs in eateries, and MUIS, which is the Islamic Religious Council, has given a clear advisory that it is all right for the guide dogs to be there. And I'm wondering, I mean, this is like a slightly smaller issue, but there's also the bigger issue of the pink dot versus the wear white. And has the community engagement program been effective? And are we actually talking to the right audience, not just the converted? Thank you.
Okay. I think there are two parts to this again. One is about engaging the community for the purpose of fostering racial and religious harmony. And that's what MHA is doing, to make sure that this relationship that we have built over the 50 years, we continue to preserve it, cherish it, and protect it. But what you're talking about is slightly different. That one is about the Muslim community themselves, who need to reconcile some of these changes that's happening around them, around the world, and just close to them sometimes. And how do they reconcile that with their religious beliefs and their religious practices? We sometimes, as Muslims, we don't understand or we don't know that even Islam is not monolithic. It is not just one view of things. Indeed, many of us may have finished reading the Quran but don't really understand what's in the Quran. And therefore, I'm not surprised that even non-Muslims don't understand Islam, because Muslims themselves don't have a comprehensive view of what they are. Because once you have that, you're more open-minded about not just about your religion, but also about other people. Because Islam, as you really understand it, is a religion of peace, coexistence, and respect for others. Indeed, one of the things in the Quran says, if not for you, the churches, the mosques, and the synagogues will be burned down. What does it say? It means you're supposed to protect it. And here we see instances in some countries where they are actually burning down churches, preventing it from being built. What's gone wrong with us? Yeah. And then this is something we have to reconcile within ourselves. And I'm glad that MUIS and the Muslim society for the last 50 years have been building capacity with our ustaz, with our religious leaders, who have also not only just get knowledge or credentials from Azhar, for example, but are also beginning to go to other universities like Oxford, Southampton, to learn about other people and to learn to know the other world that they have to interact with. And this is the unique opportunity for Muslims in Singapore, because we have to learn, we can show the world that as a minority, we can succeed, we can live together with others with respect for each other in a very special way that many countries are still trying to find what is the best way they can do.
Minister, if I could just add on, Clara, I'll come to you in a while. If I could just add on to this point. You know, CMIO, right? The standard 4-race formula of Singapore. How relevant is it today? You know, Chinese, Malay, Indian, how relevant is it today? The classification, but the thing is the number of intermarriages, for example, has been increasing, right? In what year was it? 2009, 2008, it was 9% of intermarriages, interethnic. Today, it is double the amount. It's almost 19%. And the number is increasing. We're seeing a lot more couples. So, is there still a case for so much of racialization, not racism, but racialization of Singaporeans, you know, by looking at ethnic stereotypes? Even the government statements have been made stereotyping different races, people of different races. The late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew himself has stereotyped people. When is this going to end? And I think a lot of Singaporeans today, especially younger generations, we need to go beyond race. Does it always have to be a reality of our psyche? Are we ready to start revisiting some of these things? And I think some of the members of the audience have questions pertaining to this. But before that, perhaps I just want to get your view about this.
I don't know how and what kind of constructs people have about race and society.
Yeah.
Some, like myself, will have the biblical view of, or Quranic view about how society is built. Firstly, we all come from Adam, and therefore, because we come from Adam, we're all the same. It doesn't matter. However, in the same Quran says there are nations and there are people, and that means there's diversity. So firstly, we have to recognize we are the same in many ways, but we're also different in many ways too, and that we have to live with both. And how do we live with both? So I give a simple example, like when I ask a Muslim, you have this Chinese man who's maybe a Christian, and a Muslim man who comes to you, and you have 2 pieces of bread. And I ask them, so how do you distribute this bread? Most of them will be the Singapore answer, give 1 each. Or someone will be the Muslim answer and say, look, the Chinese guy is probably very rich, give it to the Muslim guy, Now, my answer is, you ask who's hungry. Because it doesn't matter whether you are Chinese, you are Malay, you are Korean, because where welfare is concerned, where opportunities are concerned, this should not matter. But there are some things which matter. For example, you're going to have an open house, and you're going to do it during Ramadan, and you don't care whether I'm Chinese or Malay or so, and you're going to serve wine and pork only on that day. So how do you think I feel when I go to your house?
No, but
so
Minister,
there are things that
I just want to clarify. Yeah. I think there's a distinction between racial sensitivity, being sensitive.
Yes.
It's not about being colorblind. Racial sensitivity versus racialization. Let me give you an example of racialization. Okay. I've seen members of the Indian community, for example, some of the older people saying, there's an accident. You come back and I tell so and so, there's an accident. First question, Indian.
Why?
The first question, is it an Indian? And I say, what difference does it make whether it's an Indian who died or a Chinese person may say, oh, Chinese, is it a Chinese person who died? These are all symptoms of racialization. Yes. Our instinct immediately is, what race is the person? Yeah. There was a robbery, Indian. But all this is not healthy after a certain point. It's not healthy. So we're not talking about being sensitive to racial or religious norms and cultures and values. Yes. But when the first thing that strikes you when you look at a person is, what race is he? Yes. And when you start pigeonholing the person according to the racial attributes, what we are saying is, in modern Singapore, that has a retarding effect on progress.
In fact, that shouldn't even exist in older Singapore.
But it does.
It does, because this is human. Because we have our own prejudices. That's how we grow up sometimes. That's how we are brought up. But we should have lofty ideals, that we should have a society which, when matters like this, we should not care. We should not be the first instinct to ask, if someone goes to prison, is it a Malay? That shouldn't be the way I should think anyway.
Unfortunately, it does happen.
Yes, and that's why I think we have to aspire to that society where race should not matter, it should not. Yeah. But then there are areas when it does. For example, when I am in a forum, and all are Malays, and we are speaking English, I say, what are we doing here? I would like to speak Malay with you. And that is where, to me, it matters. But of course, you have to see situation in a context. And this is why I think it's nice in Singapore where we have a context and we respect that context.
And I think, Bishoy, if I could just add a small bit, right? I think it was about a year or 2 years ago, the Straits Times, it was on a Malay New Year, the Muharram, and they put this picture of Malay boys in Baju Kurung saying that, these are Malays are highest in drug addicts or something like that, So I think that's, one issue when the media also echoes the same kind of sentiments. Yeah. It's very problematic.
Dr. Subra, you have, this is an issue close to heart.
Talking about race, I think there should be some difference between race and ethnicity. And the word race in Singapore is used very synonymously, interchangeably, and people take it as a matter of, and this is a perception that's there all the time. But then what happens is the word race itself has got negative connotations. Yes. Because people judge a person by the race you're in. For example, the Department of Statistics in Singapore, the definition of race is the ethnic group to which you belong. Yeah. So again, I feel there should be some distinction because the ministers, the government, the people all use the word race very, very loosely. The problem is because of tendencies in the world at the moment where race is being talked about all the time, it can lead to adverse reactions, it can lead to what can I say, negative perceptions of the others and so on. So perhaps something could be done to move away from the word race and more to ethnicity.
I totally agree with you. I mean, as an aspiration, we should really do this. And sometimes we oversimplify when we speak because it's the easiest thing to do. We just simplify and use what's convenient. But if I may just add a story that I had an experience with someone during an interview. She refused to put her race in her form, you know. So I noticed it and asked her, you know, you have not put your race in the form. She's a Malay. And she said, well, why should it matter? You know, you're asking me, I'm coming here because of my capability, you know. So we went discussing about the work and so forth. And then at the end of the interview, I asked her, so now I finished my question. Do you have a question for me? I said, oh yes, I do. I said. Then she asked, when we will have the first Malay Prime Minister? So it is very deep inside. It is something you cannot deny. While you can, on the surface, you want to do this kind of thing, but very deep, it matters.
So let me ask you.
But the question is about
when are we ready to
classification.
have a non-Chinese Prime Minister? Since you brought up the question.
Competency, integrity, that's it.
But you see, I mean, it's a serious question. I mean, at the end of the day, when are we going to move away from... The GRC system was introduced because of the assumption that people vote along racial lines. The statement made by former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew that Singapore is not ready for a non-Chinese Prime Minister was also a suggestion that people vote along racial lines. So my question is, even if it is true, when are we going to be ready to move away from, from this? Or are we forever trapped in this?
No, I don't have an answer when. I can give you a date. But I can certainly say that we have to work towards it. We have to work towards one way. It should not matter.
But how long is this road?
It should take as long as it takes, but you must get there. We must work together. In fact, the good thing is that we are so much better than in many societies that I've seen.
It's about foreign labor in Singapore. And this is a very burning question at the moment. We have construction workers, we have domestic maids and so on. But I think on the whole, they are going through a lot of exploitation by government and the employers as well. What they get is very little. And they take back very little back to their home countries. They come here at great sacrifice, leaving their families behind and so on. On top of that, the employer has to pay a lot of levies to the government. Could not the government think of some sort of deferred savings scheme for them, somewhat similar to the CPF, so that when they go back home, they have something to take back with them? Because most of the money they earn goes to pay the loans. Yeah, exactly. So maybe my suggestion is, instead of the government taking all the levies away to the government coffers, why not give part of it back to the construction worker or the domestic maid, so that they can take back home and become a little richer?
I think, well, that ought to be done. The first thing we have to do is to make sure we take care of our citizens first, do it well, including what we do for the CPF, retirement. These are still work in progress. And until and unless this comes to a good conclusion too, we should also then, at the same time, as much time bandwidth as we have to look at these things. I do agree with you, as fellow human beings, we should not be exploiting each other. We should not. In fact, we should really respect them. They are the one who build our HDB flats.
In fact, on top of that, sorry to interrupt, Minister. Thing is this, the construction workers, for example, they get a very poor conditions they work under. For example, they are in cramped dormitories, for example, and in the mornings and evenings you find them going in all these vans and lorries, like cattle to the slaughterhouse. No, they are being shepherded there. It's a very sad sight to see them. And when they go back in the evenings, you can see their heads hung low. They are so tired, so sleepy, and they have hardly 3 or 4 hours of sleep.
So I guess the question is, does it have to be staggered? Do we have so little resources that we can't do both at the same time? I mean, I appreciate your point, Minister, that we really, charity begins at home. We need to look after our own citizens' needs, but can't we do it at the same time? Can't we spare some of these resources to make sure that the people who are here to make life better for us
Yes.
in many ways,
Yes.
given the dignity that they deserve as human beings.
Absolutely. I think this is something all of us must do, not just talk. And I think when you see someone outside your home who is a construction worker, do you come up to give him a drink? You come up to ask how they are? These are the very small little things we start with ourselves before we say systematically let's do something for them. Because the very little bit that we do for everybody every day, it does a lot of good. You know, sometimes we have extra food at home. My wife will say, you know, there's some construction people just behind there, they will appreciate rather than throwing it away. And they do, you know. I mean, and we have to look them as magnanimously as possible because we are really better off. They come here, you know, to really make a difference in their living. And I know that I have friends who become friends, mates and so forth, who actually, because they are here, they have made a better life for their family at home. My mate has just transferred money to buy a house. And my wife said, you mean this money can buy a house? Yes, in Indonesia you can buy land and house because she has saved. So that is the discipline she has. But not every mate, not every construction workers do that. Like you say, sometimes they have to pay for their loans, for their.
On an average, a construction worker has to wait 18 months before he can clear the loan.
Yeah. We need to correct this. We have to find ways to correct this.
And quickly on that levy, could something be thought about, part of it to be given back to the worker, domestic worker or the construction worker?
I cannot answer that on behalf of my colleague.
No doubt, but then perhaps you could take it up with the...
Certainly.
Yes, some of these points can be raised.
We worry about everything, you know.
Yeah. I think, Minister, with due respect, you are always saying that Singaporeans have a part to the problem, to solve the problem as a solution to many problems, right? But I think for this issue, I think fundamentally is a policy issue because we are having modern slavery in Singapore, right? Agencies are giving kickbacks to employer for all the labours they supply, right? And there's no check and no going around policing. Right? The second point, I think...
Let me answer the first point first. I think it's important that we make any allegations, especially criminal ones, prove it, make a report. Because we will act on it. I have just passed the trafficking in person, including that where you exploit the labor.
Yes.
Make a report. We have just got one for sexual slavery. And if that happens, we will make sure we do. Because we cannot live with ourselves for allowing this to happen. Make a report, don't just make an allegation.
Okay. I appreciate that, right? But to what we know, from what we communicate, I think TWC will have a lot of stories to tell. Yeah. I leave it to them, right? But the second point is, if you do not have a minimum wage system, which applies to all, including the foreign workers, they are going to be subjected to a lot of exploitation. Right? That is why I think a minimum wage, not only for Singaporeans, but for all the foreign workers, will actually ensure that these people are not being exploited. And it actually will make the industry to think of increasing their productivity instead of always depending on cheap labours.
Okay.
I think that's a more fundamental point of policies.
Okay, let's see the response.
My response is just this. I don't know why you're making a campaign pitch now, but certainly this is something you can bring up during the campaign, and people who are expert at these policies to counter those arguments. I am not a labour expert. I'm not an economic labour expert. I don't think I can answer that meaningfully. We have a system that works, and the system currently also need to evolve. And as our morality, our understanding of what it means to be a good society evolve, we have to evolve too.
One of the things that reflecting back on the last election and how my generation, first-time voters, and also my parents voting for the first time, it was watershed because for a long time people didn't have very much choice. It was walkover for most, and given that choice, I think it's very easy for a lot of voters to do a protest vote because now you're given a choice, and if you're unhappy about something, it's just very easy to cast your vote in that way. And for me, I think that the bigger question is voter education. And how can we then cultivate in our young people and people older as well, whether through the education system or otherwise, good voting hygiene, things like, knowing who you're voting for, and not necessarily, the emotional impulse, I think, is genuine, is authentic. Everybody have a reaction to things that affect them, policy that affects them. But how do you take the bigger picture into account and how to make use of your vote in a responsible way?
I think it's absolutely something necessary. I mean, we are still a very young democracy, and we don't even have parties with philosophies and positions. We have positions on issues, but we don't have positions on principles. Whether you are left wing or right wing, and this all exists in many countries. And I think as a young democracy, we have to learn and we have to educate our young what it means to vote. And ultimately is to focus on our future, Singapore, and what it really means to have whoever is up there leading us. Because ultimately, it may not affect us immediately, but it will affect our future, our children. And these are why it is important, like you say, to make sure people vote responsibly and not, as far as possible, not emotionally, given the fact that they will anyway.
What does in your view, what does vote responsibly mean?
Well, ideally, it is sum of so many things. You are voting a person who is as human as you are, who will make decisions, sometimes good, hopefully mostly good, and mistakes that hopefully are recoverable.
How do you make that assessment in 9 days of campaigning?
That's why it's so difficult to do so.
Yeah.
And therefore, for someone who wants to be really keen in politics, myself, I was not even in politics. I was in a company which basically just make money. That's about it. And I don't even deal with people as people. And I just learned it when I got into the job. And the system that at least the PAP has created is that usually you will get in on the ticket of the party. But in the next election, if you screw up, if you have no respect for people, if you do not deliver what you say, you are out, whether you are GRC or not. And that, I think, is how we have become, what we are right now. Should we evolve to something better? Why not? If there is a better system for us, bring it up. I mean, we should really examine it. And I think right now the younger ministers, they are, I would say my colleagues that I've interacted with them, and some of them just for the last 4 years, they are more open to listening, they are more open to hear views, and they are willing to take some risk if it may or may not work. But at the very least, they are not of the older, this is the principle of it, and we are stuck with it. We should not move on it. At the very least, I think next 5 years, probably we will see how they will actually perform on their own without maybe the supervision they used to have or the views they used to have in the name of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Although I will say that Mr. Lee himself, in the last 4 years I was in cabinet, he never attended a single one. Sorry, he attended only one. Only one, and that was because we were summoning him to change his will. Otherwise, he didn't come to influence the decision of the young, because he wants them to make those decisions. Yeah. And I think it's this experience that's for these ministers at least to prove themselves. But the larger member of parliament, there is a process of listening to them, looking at their background, hopefully can judge whether they are sincere or they have the competence. And then for some, you want to give them a chance, sometimes you want to live with what you already have. That's a choice we all have to make.
Minister, it's very interesting what you just said, that the younger ministers, younger political leaders are a lot more open-minded. That's what you're saying. Lately, especially with the charges leveled against people like Amos Yee and others, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, it's had a sort of a chilling effect on the ground. And some people are saying, is there really freedom to express ourselves? People are asking, are there repercussions if we were to express ourselves openly, even if our hearts are in the right place? It's unfortunately had a chilling effect where people were opening up. Now I sense that people are sort of thinking twice, three times before they actually express their views. What's your sense? Is this healthy? Should we not sort of come out and explain it?
Particularly for MOC is a case before the court, I will sub judice if I were to comment about it. Yeah. But generally, you can see in the internet, in the last, my first 5 years was so different from my current 5 years. It was less debate in the first 5 years, less openness, less discussion, much more now than before. The media has really taken off. The new media have really taken off. There are alternative social media sites. People read more than even Straits Times. So can people express themselves? Yes, they do. In fact, there are many things, expletives even, that sometimes I read in these sites. But when it comes to anything that will hurt another community, when it comes to an opportunity for people to try and say, look, I can hurt the Christian, and then somebody else will start to do it, and then you have a society as open as that, I do not know whether we are ready for that yet. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that people are can be so blunt that they can criticize my Islam and I will not react. I'm not so sure that the Charlie Hebdo situation will not also happen in Singapore. In fact, I doubt that we can be we can last so long like that. I don't think we are there yet. But we have to evolve, and hopefully we can be more open society and be less sensitive about this thing, and that people have that freedom they want to say, and then society will say, look, shut up, you are talking nonsense. But that time has not come yet, and I think we need to evolve.
Well, I think that's a good point to wrap this discussion. I wish we could have gone on. But we can't. Let's end the discussion here. We can always have a casual chat subsequently with Minister. I'm sure if you email him with your ideas, that's a new minister style, email, get your views across. You can even Skype him, I guess. But I thought it's good for us to have a discussion such as this, where you get a spectrum of viewpoints and ideas. What is important, that one of the things that I've observed in today's discussion that I think increasingly is important, the ability to listen. I was struck by that point. But you see, it's not to be an indictment, but all of us, I think, can improve our ability to listen. Listening is not just about hearing. Listening is something that's more than casual. It is about trying to understand where the person is coming from. And today, I could see that the minister was trying to understand where you are coming from, not just listening to the words, but trying to understand. But that's what we need. We need to take time off to listen to where people are coming from, not just the words that they choose to express it with, And with that, I hope that we will find a time where we will also start listening to people with views that are contrary to ours, and not reject them because they're expressed in a language or in a style that we are not comfortable with. Because different people express it differently. Of course, I'm not talking about using expletives and so on. I'm just talking about different people have different styles. Just because a person expresses very, very passionately and almost angrily, like the Italians, they say, you're not sure whether they are making love to you or are they angry with you, because it's so much of passion. But a person who is passionate, who is probably even angry, must not be sort of pushed aside because he's angry. I rather have a person who is angry about things than who's completely bochap or completely disinterested. So I think we would like to see our political leaders, our people in authority, to be a lot more willing to listen to people with different points of view and different ways of articulating it. And that's our request as well to you, Minister, that if we can do that, then engagement becomes a lot more meaningful. People become a lot less skeptical about engagements. But engagements like this don't always have to have resolutions. Sometimes listening to each other is good enough as a first step. So once again, I'd like to thank the Minister for taking time off from his busy schedule to be here with us, and very importantly, each one of you for believing in us, in IQ. We survive if you allow us to, right? So do not let the debate end here. Log on to our website, www.Inconvenient Questions debateIQ.sg and join in the discussion online. Don't forget to like us, even if you don't like us, on Facebook, and watch our previous debates on YouTube channel. Remember, you ask, they answer, we make it happen. This has been IQ, Inconvenient Questions. Thank you. Minister, thank you.